Hi guys, just a quick update before we get on to the Welsh Open kind of breakdown with Owen and how that went. I just want to say that I've been lucky enough being given an affiliate link by Firestorm Games. So Firestorm Games are a great reputable company that have discounts through all different ranges, not just Games Workshop, even though obviously they do offers on the Old World and Middle Earth and 40k. But they also go into hundreds of different kind of brands like Star Wars Legion, Shatterpoint, board games, card games, Disney Lorcana, Magic. The list is endless. So if you want some really good offers with live stock updates and constant updates on your delivery, please use my link below. So, on to the Welsh Open breakdown. Hello and welcome. I am the Imperishable. Today I am back with Owen as we have just finished the Welsh Open. Well, I say just finished, it was yesterday when we finished it, and it was a really great tournament, really good fun. Missions were interesting. And we're going to have a breakdown of how me and Owen did, and then we'll have a look at kind of the top kind of 10, see kind of how the meta and how it played, and see maybe what we should do differently with our list and kind of our opinions on the mission. So Owen, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Had a nice day to digest the results of yesterday, process some things. It was an interesting event. I think some things went the way we thought they did. If you won't be surprised to see who won. Our predictions have come true. But
Yeah,
overall
boy.
it was very interesting event.
Yeah, it was really good. I'd say we obviously had a look at some of the lists. We looked at some of the lists that we thought were a bit fun, but some we did feel good. When we get into it, you can obviously see the results. But our kind of prediction, well, Owen's main prediction was Shay, and he did come on top. So we'll have a look at his list, kind of have a look at his games and see what kind of happened there. But the first thing I want us to have to kind of do is just have a chat about kind of like the missions themselves, because obviously with all these missions you had to, like, you played and it was a big swing. So when we have to talk about my games, my game 3 I lost because I didn't play the mission and it was a really big thing. So how did missions play into your games, would you say?
It was mixed. I think my list wasn't really built to do the objectives often. I generally speaking scored the objectives after I had shot enough of my opponent's list to achieve them. They definitely impacted how people played, and the ones which were scored at the end of every round made people play very differently.
Yeah,
Um, so
I
the
really like
first,
those ones. The ones where they're progressive, because it meant, as you say, you couldn't just wait to the end and chuck stuff forward. You had to play it really like throughout the game. It made it a big difference.
yeah, I think I prefer those. It makes it more of a part of the ongoing game and not just an afterthought at the end. It's also it makes a bigger difference to someone who is on the losing front if you can score those throughout the game and then eventually you lose on victory points, however it ends up, you can still
Yeah,
score those objective points. When they're
yeah,
scored at the end, the person who's won on points often also then goes on to grab the objective, which.
yeah. It did feel like that, especially with, so like with the last one, the mission 5, where it was get stuff in your opponent's deployment. Potentially not, but it can be like that. So if you imagine like your opponent pressures you, they kill a lot of your stuff, you get 1 unit away. They'll just sit there and just sit in your deployment and just win the mission, and it'll be those kind of things that can really affect it.
Definitely. Should we go through each of the missions? So the first one was around holding the center.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty good. Um,
because it
I
was turn
played it
3
against
onwards,
Dark
wasn't it?
Elves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
turn 3 onwards. Yeah, you had Dark Elves round 1.
yeah, Dark Elves in the first round. That was difficult for him. The first two turns where he had these big infantry blocks coming towards me. Without good armor, Dark Elf infantry isn't known for its durability. Really hard for him to live up to the repeater handguns. So that was quite difficult. How was yours?
So my game 1, I was up versus a dwarf player who was fairly new. So it was that kind of same thing, but with the mission, because it's from turn 3 onwards, there was only 4 points that you could score. So in my mind, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
if I can get it, so I can hold it 3 times, I don't really care about the first one, because in our game, he got turn one. He did hold it after the first turn, but I was in a position where I jumped on it turn two and just basically sat there with my big infantry block and just weathered the storm. So it was that kind of thing of, yeah, it was good because it meant you had to try and push that middle, or you kind of wait until the end and then try and push your opponent off. And something was good about this, and we'll realise, Oliver showed the results, that going first didn't always mean you kind of won, because you could play the missions a bit differently, see what your opponent does.
Yeah, overall it had pretty well, very little. What was the stats? I think it was less than 2% difference between the going first
Yeah,
and second,
it was very
which is
close.
that's a really good showing for what a non-kill points mission can do for a tournament. It definitely affects some armies more than others. Speaking as a shooting army, one extra turn of shooting makes a huge difference for some. But it's good to see that for the majority of lists, that second turn didn't really matter to them.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. Because I say, I obviously my shooty uh, archers kind of thing. I did probably sometimes did want that mission at turn one, but to be able to go, oh, actually, I've seen where he is. He's got it there. I jump now. But yeah, it's shooting armies are different out. But I think with combat armies, going second just meant you could dictate when you commit to that center.
Yeah, it's a combat army versus combat army is always a game of chicken, right? Edging towards each other, make someone go into charge range before you. Uh, so I'm glad it worked out that way, and the missions definitely helped that, right, with forcing people into different positions, which was
Yeah,
they were well done. I think Ollie did a good job with the missions overall. The only one I wasn't a fan of was loot and pillage. While I normally like a hold the relic, I
not
struggle
with
with that as a skirmish enjoyer.
yeah. So that was the thing. So that was game two. Was loot and pillage. So there were three tokens spread across the board. You had to have unit strength 10 to pick them up, but it didn't matter what. You just basically had to survive and not flee to hold them, keep going forwards. So those types of missions I think are quite good, because it means like you have to commit something early to pick up that loot, or do you sit back and just pray that you can jump on it at the start of turn six, so you get there turn five to hold it. But your opponent, if they know that you're on an objective, they could just force the issue and be like, "Hey, you physically can't touch it." So that means you do not win the mission.
Definitely. How did that one go for you?
So I had Richie with his gyro spam. It was a really tight game, and surprisingly enough, Richie actually won the mission, and that pushed the game to his advantage. But no, it was a really kind of interesting game, because how we deployed, I basically deployed in the corner. I thought, I'll take this one and I'll try and push to centre. But Richie had the same idea. He basically had a free one, but because he had the speed of his gyrocopters, I was just hemmed in. And I had one turn where I needed to kill three rangers to make him not win the mission, so he couldn't pick it up. And I only killed one, and it was just like, because I couldn't get my archers in range with fireballs and whatnot. But no, that was a really good game. But as I say, these missions where it's not like this one is at the end of the game, but it was very different because you couldn't just run into it at the end. You couldn't, if you didn't pick it up in turn at the start of your turn six, you can't pick it up again. So you have to be on it from turn two to five, turn two to six, like at the start.
Yeah, I think in my game of this, I played against Jake Bucknell's Beastman. I think he did quite well overall. It was a good list. We found that I needed to commit early to when I put my outriders on the table. Do I want them to already be in their open order to be able to pick them up early, or do I commit to skirmish in the shooting and try and shift later? And that actually came back to bite me, because while I did win the game 12-8, I wasn't able to pick up the loot in the final turns because I needed an extra turn to do the reform into open order. And so that really came back to bite me. And we ended up no one scored the objective in my game, at least.
Yeah, so that was the thing. So there was lots of different caveats to the mission. So for that mission, like you couldn't be in skirmish, you couldn't be a war beast, you couldn't, if you pick it up, you can't fly, which is a big one. So as you say, the big thing is a lot of people would think skirmish and scoring units are really good, which they are, But if they're not in that open order when they try and stand on it, you've got to spend another turn. So it's where stuff like reserve move makes stuff kind of quite strong. So I had scarce and horse archers. I wasn't able to use them in this game because Richie just came and just I think killed them straight away. But it's that I could move on, do a reserve move to get him in open order, reform, facing the other way, and just pray that I live, and then could potentially run away with it.
Yeah, it definitely added a layer to the game, which I thought was interesting, and I think it definitely incentivized some people to take some different lists as well, which was nice. There was more infantry at this event than I've seen in other ones, just for some more
Yeah.
scoring units. Some of them did surprisingly well and were quite tough to deal with. Um,
Which is what I think everyone's trying to hope for, is to get those infantry game playing, because it seems like it's very much a big monster mash. You don't want to run core as much as possible, but this kind of did look. So we'll move on to like I talk about my game five. I played Jack. He ran a brick of Chaos Warriors with two wizards in, but that was a tough nut to crack. It used up his core. It was really strong and powerful, but it showed that like infantry can be quite useful if there is that scoring opportunity. I don't know if he would run it like that if it's not scoring, trying to push it forward. But he had a big brick of infantry that are a tough nut to crack, basically.
yeah, we saw a lot of dwarf players there. Most of them had either a hammers or an iron breakers block, which were really good at holding them. There was a Beastman list with like a 1,500 point Death Star. Not
Tom's
amazing for all
list.
the missions, but
Yeah.
trying to push that out of the center, it's not happening.
Yeah, Tom brought a big gore unit with four characters in, and then he had a unit of dragon ogres or another kind of scoring point, and he did have I think potentially some others for like the quarters one, but unfortunately he had to drop, so he couldn't play that. But it was there, so you could make these killer Death Stars. So it's kind of what I do with my poison block, but it's that kind of thing. So that was mission 2, loot. Mission 3 was basically was just old world. It was kill the general to win the mission. You get points anyway. Usually the general is the most expensive thing, but I did see something from Richie and I thought it was really clever. So because obviously dwarves were all leadership 9, most of them, he brought an engineer who was like 60 points, and it was the same leadership of his Thane, like Shooty Thane, and he made that his general. And then when I remember him telling me what he was going to do with it, and I saw it because he was playing next to me, he just put it in the corner and was like, "You ain't getting him. I'm going to make sure that you don't get this general." And he was running around with this tiny little skirmishing guy. He just couldn't get caught.
That's it's cheeky, but it's a good idea. I think most people's general in old world at the moment can be some really expensive toys, right? Like all of these chaos dragons running around. So being able to scrimp and save on it is a
Good.
nice trick in this sort of mission. Um, how was your kill the general mission? How did it go?
So this is where I didn't kill the general. I could have probably easily in turn 2, and I spoke to the guy afterwards, and we'll see in the battle reports that I'll hopefully make in the coming weeks. But I got his general down to 3 wounds after turn 1, and he pressed up with, I like Marged in, I was like, okay, I don't have to deal with it, let's try and kill everything else. But I should have just killed it, because it would have got me another 200 points. It would have got me the mission of 3-point swing, and I just then wouldn't have to worry about this other dragon and try Myers Mirage. I could have focused on other stuff. So major
Yeah,
misplay, but it's that thing of if I played the mission, I would have won. Simple as that. There was no way I would definitely probably have killed him because I Myers Mirage it, and then I was just poison shoot it to the end of the earth basically. But no, it's that, and it's those types of things where I like these types of missions, especially with Kill the General, because at first off, Generals most of the time is the most expensive unit. Like if you look at say Chaos, High Elves kind of thing, they've got all their expensive high costing stuff. It also means that they can't always just chuck it out there, because if it dies, you get the points and you're getting a 3-point swing.
yeah. It's another 450 points or something on top of what it's worth really in
Yeah.
tournament points, right? It definitely makes you think about it more. I'm sure some people threw it out there like they always do, and that probably didn't go as well. Um, and then other people like myself, my general's not particularly useful as a general or a piece, but he was also hard to hide. I need him in my units for the
Yeah.
buffs that he gives to my other units, and that I think was probably a mistake for this game mode. I think being able to protect them is important, and using my general for buffs may have been a mistake in this one.
So yeah, that was. It's just that it's how you use your general. I say mine's my lovely dead rat just running about basically. So I just made sure he was near something tough, and just so I knew he couldn't just get sniped by like a fireball. I made sure there was just stuff blocking it, but it's just protecting him. So that was mission 3, kill the general. Mission 4 was all about table quarters. So this is where like min like unit strength can be really kind of useful. So I had 6 scoring units, and one of them, two of them can be amateurs. One's a scout. So I was able to, in my one versus Dan with his Valiant Pro accounts, was to get scoring in his table court for the entire game. I scouted in my scares and all archers. I got first. He put some dogs there to kind of stop. I then ran around. I shot one of his and got him down to unit strength 9. So he couldn't score his own quarter, but I was able to. And there was no way these dogs were catching me because as soon as they turn, I just run the other side, etc. There was no way he could stop me. So I'd say like this one I quite liked again because it's that progressive. So if you score it quite early on and then start getting like wipes, okay, you might not kill anything, but you're gonna potentially win the mission if you just overpower and sit in and hold back your opponent.
Yeah, I think this brings in like benefits to different types of units as well. A mission like this makes ambushes substantially better. You suddenly, if you've got a unit strength 10 ambusher, they might not do a lot for the rest of the game, but they might score you a couple of objective points.
It's that,
Um,
yeah.
Being able to spread out is good in this kind of game mode, right? To score extra points. And we'll talk through our games soon, I'm sure. And that didn't go very well for me. But in general, I think it's good. My only thought about this was maybe you shouldn't score it in the first turn, just to stop the person who goes first being able to often get 4 points right away if they have some sort of scouts.
But my counter to that is obviously if they have a scout or that like kind of thing, it's a bit different. But if they've had to chuck something out to get into your deployment, well, they've risked something in front of you that could potentially kill you, etc. So or could
Yeah.
die. So you're risking it for like potentially some tournament points here. So I don't mind it from turn 1. Maybe a caveat is you can't score from scouting units can't score it turn 1, and then it
That would
kind of
make
stops
sense.
that. Because I presume like Wood Owls could be quite good if an opponent hasn't screened out his backline, which my opponent hadn't. So I was able to drop in this little gap because my 5 scarce in Horse Archers is a 125 by 50 mil kind of block, so it's quite easy to get that in places.
Yeah.
So I'd say I quite like that mission because it's the progressive type. And then mission 5 was just get units into your opponent's deployment. Simple as that. The one with the most unit strength 10 wins. My guy, he had his dragon, which I think is already talked about, and I know Black County aren't using it, but Chaos Dragons are a scoring unit in that game. So if it lives and makes it to the end with 1 wound, it's going to score, which my guy did. He had that in. But it also, once again, you need this high unit strength stuff to once again survive. I'm annoyed because if I had one more Skeleton Horse Archer in my unit, I could have potentially used it as a scoring unit. But I lost one guy, like basically turn 1. I was just so annoyed. To a lone javelin that got thrown.
Nice, nice. Love Marauders. They do some work for the
They're
Warriors.
bloody good. Very good. Very good, like chaff, tech pieces. They can do stuff.
Yeah, mine for this game was against a dwarf player, which is immediately going to be really hard for them to win in this
To
in that sort
physically
of
get on
get
the
to your
board,
bonus
isn't it?
deployment. You know, if you think they start, I think it was 18 inches away from where they need to get to. That's at least 3 turns of marching to get there. Just moving, nothing else. Um,
Yeah.
Compared to my every single one of my units could march in 1 turn and be an inch outside of his deployment.
Yeah, it's things like that can really like help it, and I'd say the speed and mobility of getting in there, like because it's an end of turn thing, you can just kind of jump into it and
Yeah,
cause
look,
that issue.
the end of the game was I spent 4 turns shooting my entire army at him, and on the fifth turn, one of my units ran to his deployment zone just to get the objective. It was I definitely think the progressive ones are better to stop things like that. I understand it can also hurt some players. Like progressively scoring that wouldn't have helped a dwarf player, but it would have meant that I would have potentially had to extend more. Um,
Yeah, I'd say like I had a unit in there from the very start, so I would have maybe potentially quite liked it because I was able to get what's it called? I had a unit in there from I think from like turn 3 onwards, whereas he didn't get a unit in. Actually, he got a unit in quite early turn 1 because he was dragon, but potentially, as you say, that could have actually swung it in different places, or it probably
yeah,
meant I could have looked at ambush and getting them in earlier. So maybe that's the way they do it. Maybe make it more of a progressive one, because you say it's that last ditch, and this is the type of mission that if you go first or if you're winning, you're going to most likely win the mission.
yeah. But overall, these were far and away better than the ones in the book, I think, for making you think about the mission and play different units, which was really nice. So overall, I did really like all of the missions. I think there's some tweaks in there, but it was good.
Yeah, nice. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump over and have a look at new recruit, have a quick brief down of our kind of run of games, talk about who we played and anything like that. Then we're gonna have a look at the rankings, and then we'll have a chat, look at some pretty photos with some very nice looking armies, and have a chat about if there's any changes to our lists. Okay, so here is my set of games. So I only won 2. Did lose 3 games, but what was kind of good about this tournament, and what I think it's better because of this type of stuff, is that because it was tournament points, even though I lost 3 of my games, I came quite high up. So I beat people who won 4 and lost 1, because most of my I didn't get 20 and 0 in any of my games. 2 of them were obviously quite close with 9 to 11. Obviously, my final game was a 5-15. But it did bring me up to 60 tournament points, which got me to a respectable 13th. But yeah, so I won game 1. I then had Richie game 2. Then I had Keith, an absolutely fantastic Wood Elf player, game 3. I then, in my game 4, I had a Vampire Couch player who was very much an old 8th player. We had a chat. He was at the curry house after day 1. He seemed very scared of my list. And he said he's only played about 6 games of Old World. So he learned a few things, and he had a beautiful zombie dragon that unfortunately might have died turn 1. And then game 4, I played versus Jack, who was actually the ringer. He came in. He just came with some mates anyway to watch, but he did bring his army. We did have a drop, so it was really good to have him play. He was an excellent player. He's a beautiful army, and his list I really love as a chaos list, because it got 2 sorcerer lords and a chaos lord and dragon into one list. So that was my kind of run of games. I think I had some really tough opponents in the middle. I'd say both of my 9 to 11s were very close to flipping the other way. Let's have a look at yours, Owen. So you got a very good start. So you got 3 and 2. You got 2 20 and O's, which is fantastic. You got 12-8, but the bit that seemed to probably let you down are these 20 and O's in the opposite direction. So how were your opponents and what happened, basically?
So to preface this, you can see it's quite a polarizing list, right? Generally speaking, very good or very bad. And you'll notice, if you remember from our previous video, I mentioned that there were a couple of things this army can't deal with, and one of them is undead, and one of them is multiple dragons. We'll
Yeah.
get on to that in a moment. So game 1, I played against a dark elf player, a little bit more of a casual player, but he had an absolutely gorgeous army. It's a big unit of witches, big unit of executioners, a load of scouts. So he only had 3 drops in his entire list, and it was being led by a sorceress on I think it was just on a dark steed, and a dreadlord on a dragon. Um, that was a very difficult list to play into this many shots. The dragon was just a 5-up ward, no shield of Gron to reduce my strength or
Yeah.
anything. it meant it died quite quickly to all my shots, so it didn't go very well. But it was a good fun game.
It only had double
Game two,
save, didn't it? It only had armor and ward, no regen.
yeah, I think it
Yeah,
was 3 up, 5 up. I think that's all it had. He kept it quite cheap, which I think is a good way of playing a Dreadnought. I think you can get a Dreadnought and a Sorceress on Dragon in your list, and keeping them fairly cheap is all right. But
yeah,
that doesn't work as well against a hugely shooting army. Um, Game two was against Jake's Beastmen list, which is centered around 2 casters inside of some skirmishing blocks, loads of Dragon Ogres with I can't remember the Dragon Ogre character, Shagoth.
Shagoff. Yeah,
Yeah, as well as some pigs and some chariots. I think it was a good list to play into me with like unit saturation. I can't shoot all of them at once, right? There's some of them are always going to
yeah,
make it. It was a close game. I think my opponent might have overextended a bit, maybe not realizing quite how much output my list had. I made a few mistakes. I think I killed some of the cheaper units, and I really should have focused down. So I think that Shagoth was worth 300 points, and I ignored it for most of the game. Um, but overall, it was a really good game. I think it was nice and close. We had to do a lot of dodging to get out of the way.
yeah.
So game three, I played against Mark and his vampire counts. He's a very good and very experienced player. He's played for a long time, and he's really good with the list that he plays. Um, it was closer than the 0 to 20 makes it look. So in the
Yeah,
first turn, I was able to kill a Terrorgeist and bring the other one to 1 wound, as well as pick some wounds off of random units.
nice.
I was also able to position myself where I couldn't be screened in the first turn. So after Mark's first turn, I'd only lost about 3, 4 outriders, I think, spread across the units from a couple magic missiles. So he's brought his army forward. There's a Terrorgeist on 1 wound who goes down to like a small number of shots. And then I've got my entire army to shoot at his general. And it's the kill the general mission. I'm playing vampires. So if I kill the general, I'll also crumble his army. And I think I have to choose between standing still, getting all my bonuses and shooting into the general, or running away and try and eke out some 15-5 loss. I chose the first option, fired my entire army, did no wounds, or I did like 1 or 2 wounds. Cannon blew itself up. Mark
Ah,
made many regens, and I immediately lost because my army had stood still in front of the screen list.
ah,
I think the army is quite risk reward. It may have even been a 0-20 if I had tried to run away. So
yeah.
I'm fairly happy with the game, and I think if I'd rolled better, it might have been different. But look, losing to Mark isn't that bad. He's a very good player. He's been playing for a long time, so I'm okay with that. Game four was against Liam Howie. We talked about his nomadic war in the last
Yeah,
video.
we did pick it up as our kind of not an underdog, but one that like we were hoping was going to do quite well because it was like 50, 40 ball boys or something coming at you.
Yeah. I think it was definitely one of the like lesser expected lists to do particularly well. Um, this mission was very bad for my matchup against Liam. I think we had diagonal deployment, so your actual area to play in, well, it feels like it's quite large because you have this huge front line. You start closer together, which is
Yeah,
already bad for me as a shooting army versus lots of vanguarding boar boys. And it's also that the sides of your deployment are very shallow. There's only really like a central point in your deployment that you have any depth to put units into properly. If
yeah,
you go in the shallow sides, there's nowhere to go, especially against someone with vanguarding Borg boys. Uh, Unfortunately, I also lost the roll for turn one, which meant I only really had 1 turn to try and shoot these 5 horrifying units coming for me, and that that wasn't a great matchup for me. But look,
no,
Liam played it well. He really pinned me, and I didn't have a way to get back out. So that one went the way it went. Final game was against Dwarves. It was a friend from the club, actually, Adam Wood. I haven't played against him personally before, but I know him from other game systems, so it was
lovely
nice seeing a
bloke.
friendly face.
Yeah,
Yeah, very nice guy. Uh, Unfortunately, he was playing like a nice fluffy dwarf list into my horrifying Outrider spam, and it went exactly how you would have expected. Um, but it was a good fun game overall.
Yeah, so let's say it's those kind of swings and roundabouts. We talked about how your list is that kind of risk rewards, where as you see some of the matches it's 20 and O's because you're able to really shoot off. If you played Liam's game again, but let's say he gives you turn one, let's say you got that first turn, how many ball boys could you take off before he gets that position? So that 2 rounds of just full shooting, wondering how strong that can actually be, because once you start taking down these ball boys and they have to start taking leadership tests, potentially you can really start hurting them. But he was in a real position where you weren't probably going to do enough before he's in a position where he can actually hit you. But as I say, it's just that turn one can make a big difference, especially for a shooting army. But it's just the luck of the dice there and bad matchups on certain missions. So your list, as I say, is maybe looking more towards teams, because that could we could try and get you to a list or on a certain mission and be like, I can't go into that because I'm going to get hemmed in, etc.
I definitely think it's better when you can in a teams tournament you can sort of manipulate who your opponent's going to be to a degree to stay away from those really red matchups. I think there's also some flexibility and some tech that I should look at with this list. If going first is as important as it seemed to be to my list, that new General von Lohenhack giving you an additional +1 to go first is a big thing. 190 points might be hard to find, but overall, I think that's probably
It's
a good choice.
it could potentially be worth it because if you get a +2, because you are generally quite low drops. Because I know Liam is a low drop as well, but if you got that first drop and you get an extra +1 to that, you're at a +2. You need to roll a 5 up to win, and if he rolls anything like a 4, you only need a 3 up to win. So it is those kind of, it swings how likely you'll get that first turn.
Definitely. So I think I like the list. I think seeing it against things like Mark's list and do well, like I said, the final result is the final result, but it felt closer in the game than it may look. I'm pretty confident that with some tweaks, it can be more than a joke of a list as well
Yeah,
if I put some more time into it.
yeah. So that was our kind of like run of games. I think it was quite good fun. I say I'm hoping to do some battle reports on mine if I've got enough photos. But let's have a look at the rankings. Let's have a look at how it kind of planned out. Let's look at some of these top factions. So here is our kind of top 14. Let's just walk out the screen. We did have Shay as our number 1 player. Shay is a great player. He almost won Masters and ninth. I learned that at the Curry House. And he's the only person who went undefeated. He's the only person who went 5-0. Okay, and even with a -5 tournament points, because he was not painted, he still came out on top. He had a great list. We've already talked about it and that. So, but if we keep looking down, it seems it's more these kind of evil factions. So we do have Adam Harper, but he's playing a very good Brett's. Then we have obviously Mark's Scream list. We have Sam's High Elf list, which was very much like an Unbreakable Bricks kind of thing. Jack Ward's, who I played in my game 5 with, once again, double level 4 and also Chaos Dragon. Our kind of lovely pick that we really wanted to do well was Liam. We've got Keith again. Let's say I played him with his Forest Dragon. Jake Bucknell with the double Bray Sherman. Matty from our club, who basically he ran the exact same list that he did all the way back in September. I don't think he changed it at all. And he had probably the worst matchup game 1 versus Richie's Gyro Spam. Because I remember Matty telling me, asking, what can I do? And I went, you can't. Just hope you win the mission, mate. So that was really good to see. Rob West with Dwarves. So it's nice to see Dwarves quite look nice up here. And he played more of like a traditional Dwarf list. John Marston, once again, another High Elf list. Mark Saunders. So he's a guy at the club. He played quite well. Previous fantasies. And he played with Ogres. So getting a top 12 of Ogres was really kind of interesting to see. He had some good games. I came 13th with Tomb Kings and being a top Tomb Kings player. I'll say that. And Andy Shaw with some Chaos Dwarves. So what I really want to focus on it is these top 3 players. So looking at Shay, Adam, and Marcus. So let's jump into Shay. So Shay didn't beat around the bush. He killed basically everything. as we could tell by his records, he got an 18-2, he got 19-1, 20-0. He 19-1 the guy I lost 15-5 to. He absolutely just annihilated him, because I think, looking at Shay's list, that Warpfire Dragon is really fucking good versus anything with a ward save. You just don't
Yeah.
get it. It's straight to AP2, stomps as well at AP2. It's just a great list, and he was a really good player.
That Warpfire Dragon, if you played against it in 8th edition, you already knew it was a menace. If you're new to it in the old world, it's still a real bully, and particularly against some armies. I think when they run into good armored units who often also rely on a ward save, you're thinking like a Dragon Prince or something.
Yeah.
It really, really neuters their survivability, and it's still a dragon, right? So it's high strength, high AP attacks.
Yeah. And
They're
it's
very
tough.
units, and
It's
yeah, it's got its. Well, I wouldn't play it as a wizard, but its breath weapon, like stone thrower, is pretty good. It's also just amazing support for anything else, just to turn off ward saves for someone else's attacks, right?
so like if you got Chaos Knights going in, and you're versus something that's got like ward saves or whatnot, just having it there, because Chaos Knights don't care because they don't have a ward save themselves. But the amount of attacks that you can get from that Mark of Corn and hitting, just clearing stuff, could be really strong. And because the Chaos Knights are so fast as well, there's a chance you can get both of them in at the same time.
Definitely. We like this list. We predicted it to win. It wasn't surprising that it did so well, but I'm pleased with it. He's a good player, so I think he was destined for top 3 here. But I'm glad he took the top spot.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to get Shay on the channel to talk through his games, see what he will change and whatnot. So it's really good from Shay. So into Brett, who seems to be doing just really well, just in general. Big thing here, not exiles. So that used to seem the big thing. So exiles, be able to get that Vanguard and Banner, that turn one charge, etc. But this is a traditional game. So once again, though, so this guy got 4-1. Why he's done so well is he won his games quite comfortably, and the one game he lost, he only lost by like a point swing. So it shows that once again, us using these tournament points rather than win, loss, draw could really help there. So his list, it's basically unkillable and really killy Duke on a Pegasus. So it's got the 2-up, ignore mortal wounds. Always hits on a 3, which is quite nice. So it always means versus other big tough stuff like other characters like a Chaos Dragon. You're always hitting on a 3, and obviously Virtue of Heroism. Baron with Ogre Blade, Virtue of Knight Templar, and a Prophetess with a Royal Peg. Prayer Icons of Quenelle. So that's the plus 3-inch to Dispel, and an extra +1 for Hexes, and Battle Magic and Falconhorn. So I'm guessing he's used this as just a 20-inch mover, just running around, doing whatever spells he wants, getting to positions to Dispel as well, because he can cast and be outside Dispel range, of course, and then also he will be able to Dispel. 3 units amount of Knights of the Realm, they're all scoring, they're all kind of good with the 5-up wards, and then obviously 2 double pegs, one with a War Banner and one with a Ballot or Shannon, so you can't stand and shoot. So I wouldn't like playing versus this Peg Knight unit because I wouldn't be able to stand and shoot the Peg Knights. But he seems to be a phenomenal player. He's 20-0 people. He's got a 9-11 as his only loss, and it shows that obviously Brett's is still doing well. And his army, which I believe I've got a photo, is beautiful.
It is lovely. I think it's interesting that despite the comp pack and the missions really helped a lot of other, when you look at those top 12, top 14 armies, there are armies in there you don't see at any other event doing well, which is really good to see. The top spots though are still the same people that win all the other events. It's very nice that this list isn't exiles and plays more traditional Brettonians.
Yeah.
And I like seeing more Mounted Knights of the Realm to have those scoring units. I think that's really cool to see. They're one of the things which, despite being iconic, has sort of disappeared from the Brettonian tabletop.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just Peg Spam at the moment, isn't it?
yeah, like this list still uses lots of Pegasus, but at least it is doing something different, which is nice. And some of the other Brettonian players there again were very different to what was typical. We saw big units of peasants doing well and holding objectives. It was nice to see different units as well as the current meta choices. Let's say.
Yeah, and I really like this little tech piece, this prophetess. So a roll peg. It's going 20 inches, skirmish from whatever direction it wants to do. Obviously, it does want to get in combat. It probably sits near some mountain knights of around, just to give it the can't be shock. They're both cavalry. But the prayer icon I call out is just being able to 27. Okay, I'm going to go here, I'll cast all my spells. I'm going to make it so you can't cast yours. Or get that. And if it's like a hex spell, so like a really good counter to something like this, kind of pressureless, is something like Miasmic Mirage or Plague of Rust or anything like that, where he's going to most likely be in a range with your prophetess when they go to cast it. So getting that +1 to dispel can be really bloody strong because it means you just have to match what they roll. So if they roll a 6, oh, you literally roll a 6. You don't have to beat their dice roll with that +1.
Yeah, I think a lot of the arcane journals or even some of the base books have an item that does essentially that, and almost all of them are worth taking for their points. They're usually a good choice. Some have better versions than others. I think Infernal Puppet is sort of
I
a very
think
strong item, but
probably best item in the game personally because I play obviously Magic to really just shut down your opponent's Magic phase. It's just phenomenal, and you don't have to be an arc. You just have to be within 24. It's just phenomenal.
yeah, I think it's definitely up there. I've got maybe one or two items that I might peg higher, but that's more to do with the like value proposition.
Yeah,
15 point Seed of Rebirth, extremely common magic item,
yeah.
unbelievable value in
It's
them.
just stupid.
But like as a standalone piece, Infernal Puppet, sorry, probably is the one. But I do like that the prayer icon, or I think there's the Idol of Mork in the Orcs and Goblins list. There's a few of them, and they all do a similar thing, and they're all very good.
Yeah. So, well done, Adam. Smashed it with the Brett. So we'll go over to the third and the last one on Army. We'll talk about Mark. So the guy who did unfortunately beat you, Owen, but obviously we talked about it. He brought obviously a big scream list. So he brought double Necromancer on Mortar's Engine, obviously buffing each other, double Necromancy. So one of them's got 5 spells, one has 4. He's got double Tomb Banshee because they're nice and cheap. He's got a core that is just there just to survive. It's probably core is there just not to kill anything and just sit there and be a nuisance. And obviously with the zombies, with the newly dead rule, they can res them up that turn one. So if nothing's been hurt, he'll just res them up. Spirit hosts, amazing. Ethereal, fly, swarms. So some armies, if they haven't got anything, just won't do any damage to them. And then obviously 2 terror guys. So it's 6 screams. It's really focused down on that negative leadership. He can get to -6 leadership with double spiritual vortex, a spirit leech, and then the scream themselves. This is just a great list. We've seen it do well in other tournaments. And as you say, I spoke to Shay, and the reason why he probably did Shaded Win is his dragon. He failed to get Spirit Leech on both of his wizards. And with Infernal Puppet, he was able to shut down the spiritual vortexes. And when he went to scream his dragon, because if he got rid of that, it's kind of a game over for Shay. Because it's so many points, it's really strong and tough to deal with. I think he rolled 5, 7 up, 7 leadership 7s, and only failed 1 by 1 wound. I mean, that's all what happened to his dragon, if I recall what Shay said. It's a horrible list. We've seen it since the start. It's a really good list, and I think if piloted well, can do well versus anything, as shown. He's got 2 20-0s, a 19-1, 14-6. He's a fantastic mark, and he's been around here an age. He knows how to play Warhammer, and he seems like a lovely bloke.
Yeah, I agree. Despite the 20-0, he was very fun to play against. He's a knowledgeable guy, and as a vampires player as well, I think this is close to as good as it gets. I think there's maybe some tech you can put in it, but I know Mark's played this a lot, and this is where he's come to with his best iteration of it. I do wonder if you change some of the core depending on the comp.
Yeah,
But 40 ghouls is very good in this game mode.
he's got
I
to
personally,
100%
I
all
think we
that.
talked about how I like Graveguard. Graveguard are several points per model more than ghouls, which really does hurt them. So I think the ghouls can be better in a lot of situations, but this is like the tried and tested list, right? You see a lot of people play with some variation of it, and it is very strong.
Yeah, it's just it's a great list. As I say, depending on the mission pack, you might want to spread out that so you get multiple scoring units. I was surprised not to see maybe, as you say, a smaller unit or maybe one more spirit host somehow. Obviously, you probably couldn't get the points for it, but just to make that a scoring unit as well. But it's obviously done really well. He's got three tough scoring units that probably can't die, and he's hoping to then kill your scoring units and obviously then just scream you to death basically because he didn't win close. It wasn't like 12-8 all these wins and he only just won. He 20-0, he 19-1. He killed stuff basically.
Definitely. I think like people view it as points denial. It is very hard to take points off of a vampires player like that, but as you can see, it's very easy to for them to take them off of you. I think it does it all really. It's a tough nut to crack while doing a huge amount of damage.
Yeah. So that was our top three. I'd say I'm gonna try and get Shay on soon, so we can have a chat about his game, see what he did, why he took certain things in his list, and stuff like that. So enough about kind of lists and tournament things. Now let's have a look at some pretty photos. So first up, we have Owen's Empire army. The first question I've got to ask you, Owen, when did you finish painting this army?
It's about 10:30, maybe 11 in the evening, the day before the event. Look, I'm pretty pleased with it for how late it was to the table. It's I went for a bit more of like a grim dark style. The guys are pretty dirty with splashes of color here and there. I was pleased with it overall. I think it looked nice on the tabletop, even if it didn't look like a traditional Null list.
It's just not, is it? There's no big stake guard, blobs, blah blah blah, and handguns galore. Well, there
I,
are a lot of
think,
handguns.
I think I might have had. Maybe I didn't have the most cavalry. I think I might have the second most cavalry out there.
It's just oppressive. I remember someone asking you, "Oh, so you got 2 units of arrows?" No, three of them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
How
Yeah,
many are in those? And I said, "Oh, there's 8 and 2 of them." They're like, "Oh, that's quite a few." And then I reminded them of the 14 in the final. Yeah, it looks interesting on the table. Let's say that.
it must be a bit of a pain to play with. Just make sure you get line of sight. Don't want to cause yourself heavy cover, etc.
I found that with cavalry actually, I appreciate that in the comp pack it says you can't be more than 10 wide, but because I'm skirmish, I'm allowed to be more than 10 wide. And I actually just it looked horrible on the table. I had a line of 30 outriders on my deployment for the majority of the games, with small gaps for war machines. It was it was the worst thing I've ever done in fantasy. I'm looking forward to state troops going back. I hope.
You're a horrible man. You are worse than me. So, say lovely, lovely army, Owen. So let's go through some more. So this is Rob's West's lovely dwarf army. As I say, he's got a big unit of Death Star in the middle. He's got 2 Iron Drakes. He's got an anvil in the back, which I unfortunately didn't get a good clean photo of. But it's just lovely and it's really nice to see. Good to see some dwarves out there.
Yeah, he did well in the event, but he's also a really good painter, and I can't express how nice this army is to look at in person.
Yeah, it's great and yeah, it's just lovely to see. And I love the it's the movement trays, how they're actually painted and not just there. He's got the tufts, they're holding it kind of thing as well. It's just nice to see. So, on to our third one. Ooh. Ah. So we have Mark's Ogres. So probably what you see with most ogres. He's got a big beast. He's got some balls because you have to iron guts. He brought yetis and more fangs. Just general nice painted army. I say Mark's been around a lot, so he knows what he's doing with them.
I think the interesting thing about this list as well is that Mark plays with those Yetis and he doesn't scout them like a lot of people do.
Yeah, he vanguards them, doesn't he? Because you actually probably potentially on certain missions could get a charge turn one maybe.
I think he did a few times in that event, and it does make a big difference. That unit's fairly fragile, right? But if they're already in combat, then you're getting points out of them from the first turn.
Yeah. So then we've got Adam's Double Dragon High Elf list. I was meant to play this game too, but there was someone didn't put tournament points in correctly, so it meant I played Richie, and it's just so nice. I believe it's his 8th edition army that he plays with, because obviously he's got base extenders for everything. But Double Dragon Adam, it's just horrible, man, horrible.
It's a mean list, but it is very pretty. I think the colours pop really well. It's nice and it's vibrant, which is
It's
different to a lot of
different.
other
I was gonna
fantasy
say
armies.
it's different to what you normally see for high elves. This green, so it's lovely to see it. So let's go have a look at number 5. We've got the Troll Horde guy. I love anyone who runs Troll Hordes. They are beautifully painted. They're proper like old school looking. They look like what you'd see in the trailer for Total War Warhammer. Those ball boys. I just love it. Just a beautiful army.
I think it's fantastic, and this was my pick for probably the best painted army there. I don't think it won. I think it might have been robbed. That Boar Boy unit itself is probably the nicest painted unit at the whole event. I thought it was magical.
It is gorgeous.
They're really lovely.
We then have another Dwarf Frog. So what I love about this guy bought about 20 Slayers. An absolute Chad. He was coming straight at you. He was prepared to die for the glory of the Dwarves. And it's just nice to see this. And once again, he's done the same thing that Rob did. I know the fairy's not great. I didn't get close enough. But looking at his movement trays, so he's got those and they're actually like painted with it. It's not just a wooden thing like mine are or anything like that. It's thematic with the army.
Yeah, and look, that guy plays dwarves, right? He's got a bunch of thunderers, a big unit of slayers, some gyrocopters. Like that's how dwarves are meant to be played, right? It's a great army, and it looked really good on the table.
So well done, Toby. Lovely. Okay, we are on to a different Empire army. This looks like Empire, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So I think they used a lot of Perry miniatures, like historical miniatures for their state troops. They looked really nice. And then they've got some like counts as demigriffs, which are on wolves. They looked really good, as well as then a couple of Pegasus and a Griffin character. It's a really lovely army. It looks very different. The steam tank in the corner being a ship.
A steamboat.
Well,
it's great.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool.
It's amazing, lovely army, and it's just that what I love about Old World is it's technically a 2D game where you could just play with bases, but because of its base size that matters, it doesn't matter how big your model is, etc. You can do what you want with it, and it's just lovely to see. So something like this is great. Oh, we've got Rob's again. Sorry, Rob. Okay, this is a Orcs and Goblins player. So he brought the massive thing of Night Goblins, which was lovely to see. And in the back, what is that thing at the very back there? Is that his
I believe that's a wyvern.
That's a wyvern. Oh.
I believe it's a wyvern surrounded by some squig hoppers. Underrated unit, love a squig hopper.
God, I love a squig hopper. But that is beautiful. I'd say there were some amazing painted armies, and I think total, I think there were only 3 that weren't fully painted. Shays were almost painted. I think there were only 2 others that weren't. So it was really good to see, because especially that officially you didn't need to have a painted army. It was worth 5 tournament points. Okay, you would lose 5 if you didn't have it fully painted, but it just shows the effort that people put into these. And I'd say this looks like, again, an 8th edition army, because if you have a look at the movement trays, they've got those slots to make sure those Night Goblins are put in there correctly. But once again, a lovely, beautiful army. And then here is Adam West, the one, the myth, the absolute Chad. This got my best voted, and I think the reason why I did work it is the only one with display boards. It was really lovely to see. He's got his peasants out front. He's got his knights charging forward. He's got his pegs kind of charging over, and in the middle he's got his lovely prophetess leading the kind of charge, the crusades of the Brettonians. I just thought this was beautifully done, and once he's done it really smart, it fits fully on his shelf. So I think behind him where he paints, he's got like a nice little shelf, and it just sluts in perfectly.
Yeah, Adam's got a beautiful army, and I think the display board is great. I think it looks fan. If you ever see a picture of his cabinet at home, it looks great in his room. But it's fantastic on the table. My favorite unit in the whole army though is his peasant block. It looks fantastic. He's got like a little movement tray fellow with like some tents, like they're waiting in the castle.
Yeah,
It's a
it's a
very
good
very
unit
cool
for
army.
this. Yeah, well done, and he did go on to win Best Painted Army. And I really do think the display board helped because it just did make him pop that little bit more. So it
Yeah.
was really good to see that. This is Marxist again. Okay, and then a Dark Elf army. I think this is this the guy you played turn one, game one.
Yeah, this is the guy I played turn one. It's a really lovely army actually. The bases all sort of bring it together. I like the idea of it's cold outside Nagaroth and
Yeah.
they're coming out of the gates. It's a lovely looking army and some of it's exceptionally well painted. The dragon was an interesting 3D print. It had like its whole head was like a gaping maw. It looked very
Ooh,
scary. It was a really nice set.
nice. This was Jack Ward's list. This is what I played final game. Once again, it had that kind of this was kind of like it had like a Zinchian, but also like kind of cold chaos waste vibe. His two gigantic spawns were two woolly mammoths, kind of showing they're coming from Norska, and they are an absolute ton. I moved it once for him, and I was like, this is ridiculously heavy. But it's this kind of I love about it once again. These are massive monsters ready to charge forwards, and it's a great kind of proxy for a gigantic spawn because obviously it's big, it's going to charge you, it's going to be tough to bring down. So it doesn't, it still has the same feel as a big kind of monster.
I think that that's a big benefit of the, like you said earlier, about the base size being the only thing that really matters, as well as some of the special rules. It means you can use what models you want to, right? There's
Yeah,
currently no war mammoth in the game. Heartbreaking as that may be, you can use them to represent other things.
yeah. I'd say it's what I love about it, and because I know some other people. I saw someone's doing so. Tom, the vice captain for England, he's currently doing a Empire, but all goblins. So he's done his goblin outriders, and they just look hilarious. He's got a goblin war wagon. It's just funny, like getting drawn by wolves. It's just great what you can do with them because of its just bases. Okay, and then finally we have got Alex Cohen with his chaos. His lovely dragon, which is, I believe it's Age of Sigma, isn't it? This dragon, it's not Corandus, it's the other one. I believe it's called.
Yeah, I can't remember which one. I think it's a good guy. It's really been it's cool to see it used as like a corrupted chaos dragon and like the
Yeah.
idea of it being taken over. His sorcerer on horse was also really well painted. I liked it a lot. And I can't remember the name of the model which he's used as his giant spawn. The like
Oh, they're the thing from the Drakenhof, not Drakenhof, the Marauder box thing. It
the
came in.
Dark Oath set. Yeah,
Yes.
they are really cool looking.
And
Great
they're
proxies for
very kind of like warp infested, like death. So once again, it's a good counter. It's not. It's something that would quite easily represent it.
definitely. And that's what's nice about playing in these tournaments, right? Everyone sort of respects the fact that it's a very creative hobby. And while sure we all support Games Workshop through buying their books and playing their games, you can buy and find some fantastic models out there, even in their other ranges, not necessarily the old world ones.
Yeah. What helps there? Okay, so we're now going to have a final debrief. We're going to have a talk about some changes maybe to our list. So, Owen, overall, I think it was a great tournament. I think everyone really enjoyed themselves. It had 50 people there. There had people on the waiting list. I believe Ollie's already trying to plan out another one, potentially in 6 months, so kind of more summertime, and try and maybe make it every 6 months. Is there anything, I just want to talk about kind of our list, that if, let's say, it's using still these kind of comps with missions, is there any major changes that you might make to your list?
So I think that the two biggest changes for me would always be around the characters. I think the core of the list is good. Two Hellblasters, two cannons with engineers is great. The Outrider spam works. The character changes I might do are that General von Lowenhack we mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
First turn's really important to this list, so getting the additional +1 is potentially worth that. He's about 190 points, so it would really take a bit out of my list. Or potentially a level 2 mage. I think that if I play with it enough, I might get used to using it, but it's definitely probably raises the skill cap on this army from walk forward and shoot.
yeah,
The only other thing is the Road Wardens. They are a really good scouting unit with the changes to scout affecting your drops. I probably, they're not as good as they were. And in this event, I found them really hit and miss. There are some armies scouting small units on the side. They can hunt things like war machines or other small units quite well. There wasn't very much of that represented there. So
yeah.
without, if in a more refined version of this list, I think maybe they don't actually make the cut, and they might be what is replaced by another one of these characters to either give me some sort of dispelling presence or, like I said, another +1 to go first.
Yeah, because it's that kind of thing. It's say you really want to press that, especially with the scout change is massive. So it does kind of affect my scarce and horse archers. So maybe still having one as a drop, but now it's just, as I say, I'm also shooting armies, so I'm trying to make sure I can have that turn one to be able to position myself where it's there. So that's really interesting to see. Something else, obviously, I learned this from Ed, and it's this kind of thought process is witch hunters being able to have that magic attacks on all your shooting, maybe on one unit.
So I considered this before the event. I toyed with originally it was 3 witch hunters, then it was 2 priests, 1 witch hunter, and I ended up going to 3 because I found that one of the things that really hurts this army is magic missiles. And there are a
Yeah,
lot of magic missile spamming armies at the moment where they focus on characters who are slinging spells the whole time. And having that 5-up ward against them was really strong.
yeah,
I think it is important for the large unit. You're protecting probably your general BSB, a big unit that's trying to benefit from the Razor Banner. But it's likely that at least one of the smaller units having magical attacks would be a big difference against something like vampires, just being
yeah,
able to pull off some small unit. The only consideration there is that if you give them magical attacks, while that may be good against a larger ethereal unit, of which there aren't too many, you are committing a huge number of shots into a small
yeah,
unit, which you might need for other things. So I think it's an interesting tech where if vampires look like they're going to be more represented in the meta, I think I'll go into it. But without them, I probably risk it. I think, unless high elf players are probably out there rubbing their hands together with the Walk Between Worlds spell. But overall, I think I might go to 1 at most.
yeah. Nice. So the only thing really on my chopping block I've been thinking, so I had the Serpent Staff. I didn't use it all tournament. I know it's more of a fallback save just in case I get in combat. But I think it was 20 points that I could have maybe used on another tablet, because that tablet getting to a +8 was massive for me. And it's the snakes. Like, so they were great game one. I killed quite a few dwarves by bringing them in and just dealing damage there. They did then go on and kill a load of rangers because they had the impact hits. They hit hitting first. They got poison, etc. But I just do wonder if there was anything better to have with them, because I'm wondering how I used them. So like game 2 with Richie, they did grab the objective, so it was nice to bring them in. Game 3, they didn't really do anything versus Keith. He just ignored them. Game 4, they scored me some points, but I'm wondering if I just get another skeleton skirmishers unit in ambush and bring them in on the side there. Because the whole reason why I brought them was all for like anti-infantry, kind of just trying to cause as many initiative tests. But like I said, I did it versus the Chaos in game 5. 12 initiative tests, he only lost 3 blokes, and I'm like, and then they died because of where I brought them in. So I feel like maybe, especially with that breakthrough one, if I had 2 more scares and skirmishing units and put them in the back, could have actually won me the mission. So, and they only got me 3 kills, gave them 160 points. So it's quite annoying on that front.
Yeah, if the unit strength 10 thing continues, I think that's probably a good trade. For some reason at this event there was a huge number of dwarf players. I feel like that gave the
Yeah,
snakes more potential. But depending on how they're represented in the meta, the snakes probably do lose some more value there. I think you only saw one dwarf play at that event, right?
I saw two, but one of them was
Two.
Richie. But
Yeah,
didn't really
yeah,
count
yeah.
as a normal
The
dwarf
the
player there.
infantry part of that rule really struggled against Richie, I'm sure.
Yeah. But no, overall, it was a great tournament. Really enjoyed it. I think Ollie ran it really well. He made sure everything was going on it. He ran a nice kind of evening, kind of social bit after. I think he just smashed it out of the park. And I'm very much looking forward to the next one.
Definitely, it should be very good, and I would encourage as many people to request tickets as possible. See if we can get higher than 50 this time. I mean, look, we had a wait list, but if we can get the commitment early, I'm sure we'll be able to run a really big event.
Yeah, I think it was really good. But yeah, uh, anything else to say, Owen?
No, it was a really fun time, and thanks for having me on the channel.
It's great to have you on, Owen. I'm sure we'll play a couple more games. Getting ready for the one day that is happening on March the 15th. I am moving away
Yeah,
from Tomb Kings. I'm not going to take a sweaty poison block. I am taking full corn. Let's go,
I
baby.
I am I'm going back to a traditional empire list, so like we said earlier about the base size, I'm pulling out an old 8th edition classic, Elspeth von Draken from the Tamirakan book. I'm going to run her as a wizard lord on Imperial Griffin. That's a
Lovely.
terrible choice. I encourage no one else to do it, but I want to use the model,
You're going
and
to
I'm
be
going
a
to play my
lad.
my like Nuln Dogs of War list. Lots and lots of infantry with a griffin supporting them. I'm sure it will go terribly, but it'll be lots of
Proper
fun.
Warhammer.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much for all for watching. I'll see you later. Ta